saying that heaven and earth, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Heaven is in a man's mind, therefore earth is in a woman's womb. It was created in order to have nothing off limits to mankind's, I suppose, pious, pioneering imagination of heaven and earth, or to create its future, its pathway. So like saying a man is a woman's fortune, like a woman is a man's healing. Heavens and the earth, spermicide and embryo. Now if you're going to give birth to something, like anything that continues or even is up for the challenge, or having to, it's like the strength of the earth or the strength of the woman. Yes, that too, but at what stage have we come this far in this world to say that anybody's fit to have children? Anybody understands the aspirations of mankind in which to live in peace and harmony, and to have a one world government, not giving any preference to the latter or any preference to the other one. You need to be complementing as much as it is to be of the conduct of the earth, and a governing rule in which to travel to the moon and back and do whatever it takes, not to mention how gorgeous some people are, and to understand the space in which what it is to consolidate your thoughts as a man. If you pioneer against heaven and earth, to wonder why being taught a language, I hate to actually interrupt here or obstruct my own thoughts by saying that why a man needs money, I suppose, if he works his ass off for it, if he cannot consolidate his thoughts of that creativity or his pious pioneering imagination. People might be a romantic at heart and never sort of have enough time to consolidate their own thoughts with being able to relax or craft that in which you'd not only see through gorgeous artistic flair or even expression, right? But of course you would see it with, the beautiful person that they are. If when God created man, he said it was very good. If God created man, he broke the mold of himself, and then he simply produced the woman. If we say we behold the beauty of a woman in our eyes with what we see, like the earth, then that would explain how beautiful man is themselves. Not to give preference to the latter, but to understand we all have a vitality at stake in which we to perfectly complement, and to understand the true riches or understand the true expression of that in which doesn't take it outside of, let's say, artistic impressionism. Because impressionism is sort of like having it concreted, and it does make an impression on people, but not to God, let's say, and not to that in which we pretend we're fit for, in which to govern and rule, like the problems in which we face every day, in which not necessarily countermeasured against each day. We put things in place through infrastructure and landscape development projects in which we foresee for the new century ahead, or for investors in which to quantify by way of proportionate scale and reference to that in which they see business unfold, almost like that in which in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, not to create misconduct against the earth. Now this is like asking the question of a woman or of a man where the origin of life exists from, the elements of life, the origin of life, and the primordial scale, the primordial grounds, or the infrastructure. I don't know where they sort of go with that, because I'd say primordial ship, right? Just like the ship. As if a woman believes that you can punch her in the stomach that hard when it becomes a question of pregnancy or giving birth to that in which you say, well, the earth, the greatest liability factor in this world is human lives, and yet to say or suggest that anybody's fit to have children. Of course, that's what people aspire to want, even in relationships, but you need to hear me out here. That if you're going to be punched in the stomach that hard as a woman, should you allow anybody to punch you in the stomach that hard unless you are ready for it? Basically fit for it. Because it means that if you're up for the fight of your life, it is extracting from the ground, the earth, and that in which produces for that very pious, pioneering imagination about, let's say, creation. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. You don't just say that women are fit for having sex and that man and woman together are fit to raise babies just because the liability says that if you're free and equal to do so, that it borderlines some kind of contempt inside that very factoring, just like the way in which the wheel itself didn't provide a complement to mankind's endeavours subsequent of the Stone Age and whatnot, you know, until it became a proportionate scale of reference every step of the way, let's say, leading to it. But if you understood the terms of having to fight that hard, then like man or like woman, maybe this is where the true equality factor was to ever be drawn from. Because you don't say to any woman, I need to punch you in the stomach that's going to leave you in a state like that. Because what do you mean fight when you have a baby? It means to be punched in the stomach so hard that your child becomes the victim in the end. You might think that the child's not the victim, but that in which you extract it from. To say that anybody's fit for it, unless, let's say, you were fit and were healthy, as if to understand the rules of engagement or the groundwork for prosperity. They say that the youth is the posterity of any nation. If the world's only as strong as its woman, it's like that with any nation and family too. As much as it is to sort of be of the conduct, but sort of understand that which you leave when you pioneer against the universe and the stars above, even when you dearly depart for your workplace. To say that a child is a victim, of course they would be, and they absolutely have to be seen that way through infancy and through development of such a seed and such a negligent form of liability. The earth was without form and void. It's void to a child, it's without form as well. And the Spirit of God moves upon the face of the waters, which the physical body is actually comprised of. It becomes established through ways in which we do say that what a person sows, that shall they prosper. That God is not the author of confusion, it's pretty much like the key to the ignition. The way in which things fit perfectly or sound through, you know, like more of an antiquity or antiquitous to a degree, and not ambiguity, you know, but to say equity as well. Antiquity versus equity, but then furthermore inequitable, if it meant that, of course, like the foundation or the grounds in which they location, then at what point do you stop and get punched in the stomach so hard and say that you were ready? Think about that as a term of reference to say, well, what would it be, let's say, for the new millennium or any time in history, a 21st century prototype model citizenship in which to rule the world, to conduct the world, the foundation of the world, and that which from the very beginning is intended to create and not just prioritize. Because they say you've got to get your priorities in order, and like those gears and the shifting mechanisms in which, again, to a proportionate scale of reference, talks about purposes intended, and knowing full well that every time you do it, you might as well be giving birth to either one, a planet in its own right, like a little planet, a landscape planner, a project planner, and to wonder where the responsibility is, even through registration, and even through showing accountability in which to be fit for it. No different than receiving the fundamental practice and no different than that in which you would allow even common citizens within your own nation, let's say, which relates to sensibility, right, to keep it true to you in order to seek in vain. Let it be of no private or vain interpretation. If it means keep the Sabbath, it might as well be the same, knowing the working day starts on a Sunday. The working week starts on a Sunday, even on a calendar fresh in your mind. What is Monday-itis? Why leave everything to the last minute, especially when you've worked all week, and then, fail to get everything, drop everything at the last minute, fail to get light preparatory duties in place so that you're ready for work the next day, sort of like immediate start if you didn't have a job, or weren't quite in the mix, or to put the wheels in motion, or to accompany that in which you rightfully, govern and conduct, or pay for, or rear and raise, like a seed. How do you get a seed wrong? Well, the countermeasures, the counterproductivity, the counterintelligence claims against any person's or someone's individual seed is about as critical as understanding SOS signals. And the oldest crime in the world, the oldest war crime, or the oldest war strategy in the world, which is called stowaway shepherding, or distress signals, diverted distress signals. That's what it's like when we're fighting overseas, and didn't realize this whole time that the oldest crime, even in Europe, is that of stowaway shepherding. Anyone that knows rugby league or knows sport knows what shepherding is. What is the oldest crime in the world? Shepherding. Hiding behind people's shields. Even the dividend, even the agenda of the day, having to be diverted to it through scale and some onset fuse and mechanism and contention. If you have one more word, I will hold the whole world in contempt. But if you hold yourself in contempt, why should you yourself be any different? To understand how to run your ship, how to look after, or to, even register a response with that in which you give birth to and are responsible and accountable for through application. Could you survive it? If it meant all you did was suggest that everybody in the whole world needed help because the only people on the world could do it, trying to control the masses because you can't control the numbers. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But if you can't control those numbers, you say if there's strength in numbers but numbers in strength, then why would you need somebody else's numbers? Culture, you don't refer to culture, a cult, you don't even refer to culture, like bacteria, like cultural farming even. In so many scientific fields, it's hard to fathom, even through fashion and arrangements, or array. That if it means, you truly were nothing without it. You don't refer to it by colour, do you? It would disturb the trend and pattern of artistic expression, and the artistic wavelength in which keeps it well within culture for all diverse people, kept within the same mobility, the same streamlined compartmentalism in which to be responsible and proud for, because it is that in which you endeavour, in which to grow and govern and contend with also, through responsibilities which, even giving birth to something and being so proud of something you created, you can be dubious, you can be skeptical, but any first-time parent or people with some great responsibility, it can be seen as very daunting and pretty scary, This is big. It's no different than having to be steady and steadying up your mobility even when you approach passing away, because it's pretty big. it wouldn't even be seen as frailty. It's just a pretty big occasion, and you take it in your stride. And you have to endeavour to see that. Anything that takes away the greater dependency on oneself, it's corruption, unless you're ready for it. And if you're ready, you can be punched in the stomach for 9 months like a woman would be. If you think they could, and they might think they're okay and they're fine for it, you might even fully suggest that through all that it is simply not, that it was more of an activity contained within, sex, lies and videotape, or that in which common society sort of just lazes around and understands the theme of bipedal life, that sort of knows too that you've got to eat or put things, you've just got to have you've got to be apprehensive and interrogate those features, just like passivity or putting things in you like a seed. If it wasn't the seed, it might just be the way in which you reap or harvest an account. It might even be the pathogen or the pathology in which you share amongst people, like pathological excuses in which to reign over rights and responsibilities. That we give birth to a statistic, we give birth to a liability, just like every time we don't get it right through preparation. Because without preparation, you will not position yourself. You will not be in the great position that you ought to be if you were to experience the world, grow within your skin, build yourself capital, just like the walking, talking, upright, holistic, consecrated, reserved for special use. Someone or something that you ought to be, even if you didn't know it. Through preparatory skills and evaluation, you end by saying that approximations always lead to the approximate. Approximates always lead to the approximate, always, because it's more sharp, crisp and defined than just a simple estimation or evaluation outside of your own greater control in which to govern yourself and be responsible for yourself. It's a classic distress, and nothing's good about stress or shock and awe, or even trauma. Because if life isn't traumatic enough, that's what a physical body is from head to toe, but most importantly a woman, because in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. You wouldn't go pioneering against the heavens and go out there into the stars unless you came back to a home and a place in which you built and knew that you were fit for it. If it meant you had to constantly guard it without an angel or without something to be fresh within your perspective and scope, that when you left it behind, every time you walked away from it, it was a liability that had to look after itself or be responsible for itself. I'm not sure if being punched in the guts that hard is fit for anyone, but the respect of the module and respect of the characteristics and the moral agency in which to build and create that character. Praise be to God.